Showmanship and part of the Chicago politics that the people don't often know about.
As World War II drew to a close, the stadium opened its doors once again to both Republicans and Democrats. On the agenda this election year was the role of women in industrial America.
We have conserved hope and ambition in the hearts of our people.
Thomas Dewey was the frontrunner for the Republicans as FDR sought an unprecedented fourth term.
Will it be Dewey or Roosevelt?
Harry Truman was named FDR's running mate after a young page named William Wirtz delivered Truman's 11th hour telegram of acceptance to the podium.
I picked it off the floor and it was torn in. I still have it. It's a pretty good piece of historic moment. If that telegram had not gotten through, I'll also have been president rather than Truman.
As Chicago Stadium became a national landmark for the nation's politics throughout the 1940s, it became a local landmark for the struggling Blackhawks.
For a number of years, for most of the 50s and the late 40s, had been in the doldrums, and the attendance at the stadium probably was down to 4,000 or 5,000, just a mere fraction of what you see now, or what you had seen before sometime in the 30s.
The Hawks endured lean and meager seasons from their Stanley Cup triumph in 1938 until 1952, when Arthur Wirtz and James Norris bought controlling interest in the team.
I think between 1940 and 1960, they had a winning record only 1 year. When the Blackhawks did not do well on the ice, they often did not draw well. Wirtz comes in and takes over the team, and Wirtz does a very good job in the late 50s in revitalizing the team.
With the future of the Hawks in dire straits, the new ownership sought the services of Tommy Ivan, who was coming off 6 league championships and 3 Stanley Cups as coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
It was a 6-team league, and they finished 6 for 6 consecutive years. So that's what, as I say, my wife had all the courage, you know, to leave. We were leaving the first place club to come over to a last place club, but it worked out fine.
Serving as the team's general manager, Ivan's gift for finding talent would save the Hawks and open the door to an entirely new era in Blackhawks hockey. The 1940s and 50s provided the world with the golden age of pro boxing. During this era, 2 arenas shared time as the country's boxing capitals, Madison Square Garden and Chicago Stadium.
At one time, the Chicago Stadium, with all the tradition it has, was the place for the big fights, and everybody wanted to come in here and fight.
It was big, it was glamorous, but you had some big names, you know, like Joe Louis. I mean, there still isn't anybody like Joe Louis.
Joe Louis took on Lee Ramage at the stadium in the early years of his career. In the twilight of his reign, he faced Pat Valentino in a 1949 exhibition.
When he fought in Chicago and he fought Lee Ramage, he was on his way up, 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 up. He was a sensational man to watch because he had one of the greatest left hooks you've ever seen for a heavyweight. Had a beautiful jab.
Serving as the headquarters of the International Boxing Club, a governing organization headed by Wirtz and Norris, the stadium was the site of the best in championship boxing.
Between 49 and 53, about 80% of world championship fights that were held in the United States were held by the IBC. So they completely controlled the boxing business.
Following the retirement of Joe Louis, the commission was organized to determine a champion. That champ was found at the stadium when Ezzard Charles won by decision over Jersey Joe Walcott. Sugar Ray Robinson awed the stadium crowd on numerous occasions, including a showdown with the Raging Bull, Jake LaMotta.
And the famous words of Jake LaMotta after that fight right in the ring, that one I announced. He said to Ray Robinson, "But you couldn't knock me down."
Sugar Ray's showdown with Rocky Graziano was brief but fierce, with both fighters hitting the canvas.
"Don't make a big deal out of this," he says. "Graziano's scared of me. I notice it in his eyes. He's scared." And 2 rounds later, he went out there and knocked him out.
Sugar Ray became the first fighter in history to win the 160-pound title 3 times, knocking out Bobo Olson at the stadium in 1955. He would go on to win the title 5 times.
One of the greats that I have ever seen, a great fighter. He was like an architect in the ring.
For many fans of the sport, no battle rivaled Rocky Graziano and Tony Zale's legendary middleweight title fight.
I asked him, I said, how do you know you're going to win the fight? He said, because they'll carry me out dead. That's how much this fight means to me, you know. And I'm quite sure Zale had the same attitude. But when I saw him knocked out, and to recover and get up and then knock out Zale, of course Graziano won it. I just never thought I'd see anything like it.
Although Chuck Davey got the worst of his fight with Kid Gavilan, his post-fight recovery changed his life.
He got all cut up in that fight. His face had, you know, big gashes and stuff, and they took him out of the hospital. He ended up marrying the nurse. And they had, I think, 9 kids.
Heavyweight champion Rocky Marciano's stadium appearance brought him face-to-face in a duel with Jersey Joe Walcott. The Rock dropped by only long enough for a cup of tea, flooring Walcott in the opening round.
The fight begins, and he throws a punch and knocks Mr. Walcott down and out 1 minute, 10 seconds of the first round.
It was youth over experience in 1956, when 21-year-old Floyd Patterson KO'd Archie Moore, nearly twice his age, to become the youngest heavyweight champion in history. And of all the great champions to appear in Chicago, there were perhaps none greater than a brash young fighter named Cassius Clay, who in 1960 won the Golden Gloves light heavyweight title at the stadium, before climbing to loftier heights as Muhammad Ali.
Here's a guy that's going to be champion of the world one day. He was that beautiful to watch even as an amateur.
The reign of the IBC witnessed boxing's most glorious era. Unfortunately, its fate was doomed in U.S. courts when it was ruled a monopoly and dissolved in 1957. The 1960s marked the dawn of a new age in America and the world. The heated presidential election between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy would set the course of policy for a new decade. In the closing days of the campaign, the 2 candidates were dead even in the polls, prompting the young senator from Massachusetts to turn to the city of big shoulders for help.
Mary Daly called him and said, you're not going to carry Illinois, else come in here. So he came in, and Mary Daly organized the Torchlight Parade, which is the traditional Democratic format where they meet at City Hall and march right down Madison Street, to Chicago Stadium.
Televised live, JFK's rally at the stadium was considered a crucial appearance in his presidential victory and a memorable moment in the city's political history.
It was a huge success. He was electrifying. He had that huge crowd, and it had to be one of his finest days ever.
If the stadium is remembered for anything during the 1960s, it will be remembered as the time the Chicago Blackhawks came of age.
Oh, it was huge. I mean, people wait till the schedule came out, and they made their social schedule after they got the Blackhawks schedule.
The acquisitions of young talent orchestrated by Tommy Ivan brought new life to the team in the late 50s.
Oh, they were a well-balanced team. We had good clubs then. We've had a pretty good hockey club every year, a good competitive club. But naturally, when you win the Stanley Cup, well, it means more.
2 arrivals in particular would change the course of Blackhawk history. One was known simply as the Golden Jet.
There's a new hero on the international sports scene, Bobby Hull. The hockey ace of the Chicago Blackhawks suddenly finds himself besieged by autograph seekers after putting a new scoring mark on ice.
Hull, who was at that time quite a sensation because he was an 18-year-old kid who had the look of a movie star, if you want to look at it that way. He was a dramatic player.
I've always said if somebody offered me a franchise in the National Hockey League and gave me a choice of any player I